My name is Michael Hill. I work on the funding data and financial monitoring team. Some of you may have liaised with me on different collections, others may not. So I'm going to take you through this presentation today. So in this workshop, we're going to discuss some of the following areas. It's an overview of the team's responsibilities that I work for. So this can include the DSG, CFO assurance, the school's research management self-assessment tool, CFR, benchmarking websites, section 251, outturn and budget, the section 151 officer form. There'll be a little bit around collect, some of the main issues that we have in relation to quality assurance on our section 251 collections. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the Dedicated Schools Grant and Chief Finance Officer Assurance Statement. Now this is done under section 151 of the Local Government Act. The CFO of the local authority is responsible for making the arrangements for local finance and management controls. Under these arrangements, the CFO will need to ensure that the grant monies for the dedicated school grants are expended for the purpose for which they are intended. This assurance statement provides an audit to document how the DSG has been deployed and whether there were any issues, for instance, fraud cases within LA maintained schools. The formal terms of grant given by the Secretary of State under Section 16 of the Education Act. Previously, we have got the local authorities to upload this through document exchange, but we are currently looking at the possibility of digitizing this form, and we will obviously keep local authority contacts up to date with any information in relation to this going forward. Moving on to the CFR. The CFR framework provides a standard template for schools to collect information about their income and expenditure by financial years, which maintains schools provide to their local authorities in a financial statement each year. Financial statements include schools' resource received in the financial year, including any unspent at the end of the previous financial year, the application of any school resources, a summary of the school's financial position at the end of the year. This information is uploaded to the Department of Education Collections Online for Learning Education, Children's and Teachers portal or collects. The data collected is used to support benchmarking and comparison of schools' income and expenditure. And as you can see there is a link to the guidance, which you'll be receiving a copy of the slides, so you'll be able to have a look at if necessary. This is showing the timescales for the CFR delivery cycle. As you can see there, Collect Blade runs from April time, and then from any submissions that we get in, we will then commence data validation from the earliest point, looking to close collect sort of the end of July to the beginning of August, and then the data is normally uploaded to the benchmarking website around December. As you can see there, this just provides a link to the data, and just outlines how you can select the information and how you can filter it, etc., to look at how schools in your area might fare against similar schools in other areas, etc. And finally, on the CFR, this is a breakdown of what was expected to be received. As you can see, there a little over 11,400 were expected, and we had 238 that didn't return a CFR to the local authority, 2 returns that weren't authorised by local authorities, and 3 that weren't authorised by ourselves, which then totaled a number authorised of 11,164. So as you can see here, this is the school's financial marking website. This was launched back in 2017. It's a modern and intuitive and easy to use cloud-based application for benchmarking schools and academies by using a range of comparison algorithms. It enables quick and easy data entry, management of school and academy data, and provides powerful visualizations of financial charts. The purpose of the financial benchmarking tool is to provide schools with the ability to make comparisons between an individual school or academy trust in various categories with those of similar schools. This information can be used by school leaders to inform their spending decisions and to identify if and where and how spending changes could be made to support pupil progress within the available level of resource. The tool is a key element of the department's school resource management programme, one of the Secretary of State's priorities. Prior to 2017, the department had two separate benchmarking websites, one for LA and academies. Because the two sites were separate, it wasn't possible to easily compare the income and expenditure of maintained schools with that of an academy and vice versa. Furthermore, the LA benchmarking site was created in 2002 using old technology, leading to a reduced user experience. This site draws information from the LA CFR data and academy accounts return, so it's important that the CFR data is correct to enable effective benchmarking. This site has been continually developed with further workforce data planned. Ourselves, the funding data financial management team, are service owners for this website, tasked with resolving customer queries and with future developments. So we're talking about the budget. Local authorities are required under section 251 of the Apprenticeship Skills and Children's Learning Act to prepare and submit statements of education and children's services spending and income. The 2009 Act superseded the Section 52 of the School Standard and Framework Act 1998, which compelled local authorities to submit similar data to the department. Local authorities complete and submit their returns using the department's centralised data collection and management system known as Collect. Local authorities must submit their budget by the published deadline, which is usually around the end of April yearly. The Section 251 budget involves the collection of high volumes of detailed data within defined tables, with an aggregate of over 500 cells of data across the three tables and across the 153 local authorities, each submitting an annual Section 251 return. That gives us around 76,000 items of data submitted to the ESFA. The budget statement is intended to provide a clear picture of a local authority's planned spending. This includes how much the local authority intends to spend on things such as the school's budget, de-delegated items, high needs and early years, central provision within the school's budget, and children and young people's services. It's important that schools forums and others can compare funding between different local authorities so as to have an informed debate about budget levels and use of funds. It is therefore essential that all statements are prepared to a common format and are accurate. The statement are used by the DfE for the publication of statistics, for constructing benchmarking tables for local authorities, and for answering parliamentary questions and other requests for data. As you can see, this is just a link to the documents in relation to the publication of the statistics and the benchmarking tables that we use the data from the budget for. And then we also, following the budget, we have the outturn. As with the budget, the Section 251 outturn is covered by the legislation noted on the slide. Local authorities must submit their outturn statements by around the 25th of August. The Section 251 outturn statement is intended to provide schools, parents and others with an interest in education and children's services with details about school and local authority funding and expenditure. It informs the Treasury for monitoring purposes, informs Parliament in its role of monitoring the Department's accountability for public funds. As with the budget return, the outturn data is required to inform debate about differing levels of expenditure between local authorities and schools. The outturn statements are used by the Department for Education for the publication of statistics, for constructing the benchmarking tables, and for answering any parliamentary questions or other requests for data. The funding data and financial monitoring team have overall responsibility for ensuring that the Section 251 collections are delivered on time and data validation undertaken so that we have a robust data set. The funding data team work with numerous stakeholders, education data division who project manage the calculations, data outputs division who write the technical spec for the tables and publish the statistics. I have to emphasise the importance of receiving sort of good quality data for both collections, and then obviously that's when we will liaise with members of the local authorities in relation to QA. If we have any issues, we'll come back to question figures that may appear to be out of ranges, etc. As you can see on this slide, this is a delivery cycle for both the outturn and the budget. As I mentioned before, the funding data and financial monitoring team have overall responsibility for the 251 collections. The budget cycle, as you can see there in the dark blue, runs between September, when we will start the internal consultation between September and November, and that can run for a couple of months, and then we will do an external consultation. We will then make any changes to collects that are required. Normally goes out around the February time with a return date, which is normally the end of April, which is that's when we will commence to do some analysis, QA, and then we will come back to our local authority contacts with any issues that we feel need to be addressed or any figures that we need clarifying from yourselves. This is obviously a live collection, and as you may or may not know, the collect system allows you to upload data, submit it, and then we are able to see that data instantly, which speeds up the process of QA, and then obviously allows us to produce this as timely as a manner as possible. And obviously the inner circle, the pale blue, is the outturn. So the internal external consultation for that normally runs January to March, and then we'll do any development on collect if needed there, March to June, before collect then goes live, normally around early July, with a return date towards the end of August. And again, that's from any of the returns being submitted, that's when we'll commence our QA and liaise with our LA contacts in relation to any figures that we have any queries around. So collect, some of you may or may not have used this. So the collect system is a portal that's used by schools, local authorities and ourselves for processing data collection returns. As I mentioned before, one of the major benefits of the portal include real-time data collection, monitoring and progress reporting. The ability of local authorities to view exactly the same information as we can see when queries arise, and being able to like I say, make amendments and return in a timely manner. The collect portal is accessed via the department's secure access system. Guidance on how to gain access can be seen through the link that's provided on the slide there. Collect has a number of built-in validation and error parameters. This will alert whoever's filling in the return if a figure is seen to be outside of a range or different from previous years, etc. And there is a section on there which allows you to then add a note or a comment in relation to that, and obviously then we can see that when we're doing our QA if there's a note attached in relation to a query that we might flag up. Back in sort of the financial year 1920, we started to include an Excel pro forma, which LAs can populate offline and upload to the collect system via the click of a single button. We brought this process in as a hope to streamline the data collection stage for LAs, and also helps with making validation easier, hopefully for ourselves. So it's been out there for a few years now, and it seems to help in getting the data that we're looking for in a more timely manner. So this slide here just shows some of the most common lines that we get errors on. So as you can see there, it's income matching expenditure in relation to lines 1.9.6, 1.9.1, sorry, to 1.9.5. Anything around SEN administration, as you can see there, these are just a number of ones that sort of crop up quite regularly, and we require sort of feedback from yourselves in relation to figures that are on these lines. So as you can see here, this shows the areas from the section 251 that need to reconcile with the DSG note to accounts. We're currently going through this part of the collection currently with LAs, and are chasing up any figures that don't match between the DSG and the section 251, and if required, requesting a revised DSG note because sometimes the figure that's on the section 251 is actually the correct one, so a new DSG note to account would then be required to be provided to ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, the section 251 data collection is a vast data collection. We look at information collected via 3 tables: the LA table, the high needs table, and the early years table. This here just gives you an idea of some of the lines that we request information on. So as you can see, there's various different ones. So anything from the sort of the delegated items there to insurance costs, things around SEN transport, and things along those lines there. And then we move on to one of the other tables, which is the high needs table. And this is at local authority. This section 251 provides valuable information on high needs budgets, including areas like hospital education. Line 1.2.6 in the local authority level table has been key in baseline exercises for implementing high needs national funding formulas. Hospital education is a separate factor in the formula, and the section 251 has been the department's means to identify local authority spend. From the table, you can see the authority budgeting for hospital education services can vary considerably. So that just gives you an idea of what other things can be requested in relation to the high needs budget. And then here is the early years pro forma table. Alongside the early years NFF, we also have a number of significant changes. Early years of section 251 budget information has a number of uses. We are dependent on the LA budget data to monitor compliance. The budget data also allows us to determine how funding for the entitlement is distributed across the LAs and provider types, the average funding rate for local authorities, how much of a central government funding LAs retain centrally. The budget data is also used to produce the early years funding benchmarking tool, which allows the public to see how local authorities are funding their early years providers. This tool's published annually. And again, I have an emphasis on the importance of submitting good quality data, accurate data, obviously because this could impact funding if the information isn't as required. So now moving on to the SFES or now it's called the self-assessment management tool. This was changed to the self-assessment management tool back in the 1920 run. This resource management self-assessment tool helps to provide trusts, local authorities and school governors with the assurance that they are meeting the basic standards necessary to achieve a good level of financial health and resource management. The school's resource management tool is a checklist which asks questions in 6 areas of resource management to provide assurance that the school is managing its resources efficiently. This should be completed at school level, similar to the old SFVS. The answer to these questions feed into a dashboard which shows how a school's data compares to thresholds on a range of statistics that have been identified as indicators for good resource management and outcomes. This is shown as a RAG rating against other schools of a similar demographic. So now we're going to move on to the section 151 officer review. The purpose of the grant return certificates is for the local authority section 151 officer, usually known as the Chief Finance Officer, to provide assurances to the ESFA and DFE that the funds for pre and post 16, excluding DSG, have been used for the intended purposes, in line with the terms and conditions of grants and funding rules, and that the section 151 officer is not aware of any errors, exceptions or fraud for the financial year. Where grants are for an academic year and therefore span 2 financial years, assurance is sought for the funding for the financial year that has just ended only. 2022-23 was the first year that we combined pre and post 16 returns and collected the data online. So as you can see here, in relation to the section 151 certificate, this just gives you an outline of the delivery cycle. So as you can see here, this is just a breakdown of the section 151. Obviously, outlines there local authorities that submitted the funding lines and the financial certificate, the amount of challenges we had in relation to funding lines. We need to look at how to reduce these challenges and related queries and plan to ensure initial figures correct from ourselves, and to provide clarity on what the figures do and do not include, and to provide clarity on how to respond to funding streams paid on an academic year basis. Also, if section 151 officer signatures vary or change, it is useful if you could keep us informed of that, and there's an email address there at the bottom where you can contact us to let us know. So just briefly going to talk about who has input and plays a role in these collections. So the data you provide is worked on by the SFA, accountable for the funding payment and the financial assurance and set requirements of financial reporting. It's dealt with by our data divisions, which can design aspects of the data collection, the collect system, any technical specifications that's needed, and can store data where required. And then we've got the data insight and stats division, which can undertake data manipulation such as linking to other sources for added value, interpret the data and present it in numerous outputs. So why do we need all the data that we request from yourselves? So we have a responsibility to the service users, which are internal school users, so finance professionals, finance managers, CFOs of multi-academy trusts, any business managers at schools, head teachers, governors, CEOs of multi-academy trusts. And then obviously external users, we have local authority finance managers, school resource management advisors. Then there's people in the community that might be interested in how funds are spent, so parents and things like that. So it's also for accountability and transparency. For national and local government accountability and transparency, we have responsibility to provide trustworthy, accurate and timely statistics to the public and interested parties, and these can come in a number of forms, and there's just some screenshots there of obviously the school benchmarking table compares school performance on gov.uk. So that's all obviously available to yourselves and to members of the public who feel they want to have a look at that information. Also, having data from locations across England means we can make comparisons, which puts finances at a local level into perspective. We produce outputs from these comparisons, which are intended to help with financial decision making. And again, there we've got some screenshots of information that can be used, and you've got the RAG rating showing on the first clip there, and then school financial benchmarking and self-assessment dashboard. Again, you can look at these in your own time if required. And without your data, obviously we can't meet our responsibilities of accountability and transparency. We can't accurately compare data across locations to enable more informed decision making. We can't provide any senior officials with recommendation and give evidence-based decisions. We can't assess the impact of policy implementation. Can't understand the impact of external forces on local authorities and schools' income and expenditure. We can't drive efficiencies within the sector at local and national levels. We can't provide national and regional analysis of spending on education and other young people's services, or perform analysis which enhances our understanding of finances in the educational sector. And on this final slide here, you can see at the top there's a couple of mailboxes which will get you through to ourselves at the Funding Data and Financial Monitoring team. And there's also 3 links there which will help you look at some of the pages that I've discussed through this, including the benchmarking table there.